This morning, we called in Syrian chargé d'affaires Zahir Jabbour and informed him that he is no longer welcome in the United States and gave him 72 hours to depart.
That's US Department of State spokeswoman Victoria Nuland telling the press that Syria's top diplomat in Washington has been told to pack his bags. 9 nations, including Australia, where the Syrian representative is also accredited to New Zealand, have now told the diplomats to leave. Victoria Nuland says their actions come as a result on the attack on the Syrian town of Houla, north of the capital Damascus, not far from the troubled city of Homs.
Absolutely indefensible, vile, despicable massacre against innocent children, women, shot at point-blank range by regime thugs.
At least 108 people were killed, but the protestations from the Syrian government that it had nothing to do with the Houla massacre are flatly not being believed. UN human rights spokesman Rupert Colville believes that only 20 people were killed by shelling. The rest were shot in cold blood.
Government forces were involved. They were shelling using tanks and artillery, and it appears to be Shabiha militia entering the houses and slaughtering people in what is really an abominable crime.
The joint UN Arab peace envoy to Syria, former Secretary General Kofi Annan, says this was an appalling crime and that the Security Council is right to condemn it.
The Security Council has requested the United Nations to continue to investigate the attacks in Houla. Those responsible for these brutal crimes must be held to account.
New Zealand's Foreign Minister Murray McCully says the UN Security Council must step up and make hard decisions in order to resolve the entrenched conflict in Syria. He says it's critical that the international community emphatically demand an end to the violence. And Kofi Annan says his message is not only for the government of Syria, but for every individual with a gun.
It is the Syrian people, ordinary citizens of this great country, who are paying the highest price in this conflict. Our goal is to stop this suffering. It must end, and it must end now.
The US says it's not going to launch military action against the Syrian regime, but it does talk about tightening the noose.
We will obviously continue to look at other ways we can pressure the regime economically, politically, diplomatically, and continue to try to tighten the noose. And we will do that in New York, and we will do that in capitals over the coming days.
France's new president, François Hollande, has not ruled out the possibility of some kind of military strike. But Victoria University Strategic Studies senior fellow Terence O'Brien says it would be foolish of France to attempt intervention alone. And John Rees from the Stop the War Coalition says recent history shows military intervention isn't good.
Some of us who've been around long enough will remember the outcry in the Western press and from Western governments over similar occasions in Kosovo. We'll remember the way in which the Saddam Hussein regime was characterised because of its atrocities in Iraq. None of this was factually wrong. But what was wrong was that the Western response then resulted in a Western military intervention which killed even more people. We saw what happened in Libya with this. Everybody understood that the Gaddafi regime was a horrible dictatorship. But when the West intervened, we ended up with 30,000 dead.
Today, another 98 people, including 61 civilians, have been killed in violence in Syria as clashes rage between regime troops and rebels. Allan Lee, RBG News.